Good afternoon, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure for me, hopefully for you as well. This is our first fully in-person event in 2 years. So we are thrilled. That's exactly how I feel. So I'm glad to see that some of you also feel the same. Welcome to this event, listening to our anxiety. I'm Dennis Mitchell. I'm Executive Vice President for University Life and Senior Vice Provost for Faculty Advancement here at the university. And it's a pleasure to greet you. It's a pleasure to not be on Zoom. It's a pleasure to see some smiling faces. I actually hope some of you eat so we can see some of those smiling faces. It's wonderful. So we have a lot to talk about today on a very timely topic, which is listening to your anxiety. Like many of you, I experience my fair share of anxiety as well. So I'm also looking forward to the conversation that we're about to jump into. Before we get started, I wanted to thank the School of International and Public Affairs for hosting us in this beautiful space. Although the blinds are down, we get great views as well, so we thank them. And I want to share a quick word about University Life. University Life ultimately is a hub for Columbia student life. We share information, resources, events, and initiatives that support inclusion and belonging, health and well-being, sexual respect, and community citizenship. We aim to enhance your experience at Columbia. Watch for our weekly newsletter, letting you know all about the opportunities to connect with others and throughout the university. We hope that you will join us for any one or all of the events, so please look out. Some quick logistics for today's program. Thanks to many of you who submitted questions in advance. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end of Dr. Albano's talk, so keep track of your questions as well, of any new on-site questions. If you're watching by live stream, for those of you who are, please send your questions via email at universitylife@columbia.edu. This event is being recorded and will be posted on University Life's website within the next week. So let's get started with the conversation. A Greek philosopher once said, "Change is the only constant in life." For many of us, this has felt especially true during this pandemic, which along with national and global events has changed many aspects of our lives, often in ways we cannot predict. The impact of the Omicron variant, our ongoing conflict now in Ukraine are just a couple of examples. As we experience what can seem like constant change and experience all the feelings that for many of us accompany it, such as stress, anxiety, fear, some questions definitely emerge. How can we move through and emerge better to connect to what we care most about? How do we harness our feelings, learn from them, and stay connected to the big picture? Part of the answers to these questions may lie in reframing our feelings for ourselves, to see them not as obstacles or barriers, but as teachers we can listen to and learn from. To help us better understand both what looks like and how we can begin to do this work, I want to introduce our incredible speaker this afternoon, Dr. Marie Albano. Dr. Albano is the Columbia University Clinic for Anxiety and Related Disorders. CUCARD is how it's pronounced. She is the professor of medical psychology and psychiatry, founding CUCARD in 2004 when she joined the Columbia faculty. Upon her retirement, the CUCARD professorship will be renamed after Dr. Albano. You know you're impressive when they're going to name it after you. I want to share some interesting facts about Dr. Albano's career journey and some highlights from her body of work. I'm going to give you slightly the shorter version, but I encourage you to read all about her online. It's well worth it. She received her PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Mississippi. She is a fellow of the American Psychological Association, the Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies, founding fellow for the Academy of Cognitive Therapy, board certified in clinical child and adolescent psychology. Dr. Albano received the 2015 Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies Award for outstanding contributions by an individual for clinical activities. She has published with colleagues over 200 articles and chapters on anxiety and depression in youth. She's been a lead investigator on 2 of the largest treatment studies funded by the National Institute of Mental Health that addresses treatments for anxiety and depression in children and adolescents. She recently launched, with co-host Nina Korolets-Matza, the Listen More podcast for parents of adolescents and young children. Quite simply put, we are very fortunate to have her with us today. Please join me in giving Dr. Albano a warm welcome.
Thank you so much for that welcome, a very warm welcome. And if you want to think about anxiety, think about the fact that there's a lot of associate professors waiting for me to either fall down the stairs or retire. So anyhow, thank you so much. And I am really honored to be here, to be back. I was here a couple of years ago. University life is something, I follow the Instagram. I love the Instagram. Telling me about what's going on here on campus, which helps to inform me, actually, in a lot of ways. For many of the college-age and university students that I work with across the country, who start here in New York with me and then go off. They should have stayed at Columbia, but silly them. And helping to deal with and address anxiety, because it's different for different people in different geographic regions, and for all kinds of things that we all know too well that are going on in the world. So what I want to talk about is listening to our anxiety, tuning into it, which seems counterintuitive to what you want to do. Most of the folks I work with, and myself too, I come at anxiety very quite honestly because I was one of the most anxious kids when growing up, and all the way through, I can say, very anxious. And you don't want to listen to your anxiety. In fact, you want to listen to the one thing it says, which is get out, run away, avoid, pull those covers over your head. That makes sense in the moment, but we have to listen carefully because there's something there for us in the messages it's giving us, even those most difficult messages. So first and foremost, tune into this poll here. What I want to hear from you all, and those of you who are listening at home and watching from home, what's stressing you out these days? What is stressing you out? Where is your anxiety coming from? What's prompting it? Let's get a sense of that from everyone. We'll keep this up another second. Taking the temperature of this room and also those at home. And let's see what comes up, listening to our anxiety. Because there's plenty of things, of course, that go on just by virtue of being human and living this life that stresses us out in any given moment. Thoughts about your finances. Am I going to get those student loans? How am I going to pay back those student loans? Do I have enough money to make it to the end of the semester? Am I going to get that summer position I'm looking for? Thoughts about what's going on in the world, locally, around the country, and of course, across the ocean. And we may have family and friends in very difficult situations right now. Thoughts about tests, exams coming up, our own mental health, how we're doing. Do we have someone who can actually help us understand how we're doing? What else? We have a beautiful view from up here, yes, even though the window shades are down. And look at those skies, look at how clear it is. And what about worry about climate change? There's so many things being human and thinking and reasoning leads us to be anxious about. And you know what? Everyone who's experiencing some sense of anxiety right now, it's very valid what you are experiencing. no matter what. Now, do I get to show this? Or?
No, you could just share. Unfortunately, that's just it won't upload up there.
Okay, got to put my glasses on to read. So what we have right now from our group here is about 24% or so are worried about future job, and the same, about 24% about our mental health. These are the two highest in terms of concerns of those who are tuned in here. Then that's followed by academic stress, your current financial situation, then national world events, and physical health, your physical health, okay? So anxiety is always with us. And for those who are responding here, there's different degrees of that anxiety. Some may be feeling these stressors and anxiety very strongly. Others may have it always on their mind, but they're moving along. And for others, it comes and goes. But this is what's prominent for them in terms of what we just read off. And of course, you know, just being in the world and just being human, anxiety is natural and normal to us. It is one of the basic human emotions that we are wired for. It serves a great purpose for us when it's working on our behalf and when we're listening to it carefully. It can trip us up then when we're tuning in and hearing messages in a more distorted way, because maybe they're very loud or constant for some reason. And it can trip us up because it just keeps happening again and again, even if objectively it seems there's nothing really happening, but still you're feeling anxious. Anxiety is a natural, normal emotion that's there for us. But then we experience stress in the world that seems to come out of nowhere. Out of the blue, unpredictable events that I have actually I've had several of my clients over the last 2 years say, the only thought I have that keeps me hanging on through this, and these are college-age youth, is the thought that we're experiencing this pandemic and it's not the Middle Ages. So I can stay in my room, I can get medical care, I can keep in touch with people, but boy, is it hard. That's a coping thought for someone. And it's what's helped them to hang on, to think about what could have been. But let's look at the realities of the coronavirus. Some of us here or watching have lost loved ones and friends. How many degrees of separation do we have from those who have been impacted by the coronavirus? This is hard to deal with. These are losses that didn't come about just, you know, as part of life moving on. This is an unprecedented event and virus that caused these losses. And then there are the losses that people didn't quite know what to make of at first because they thought, oh, it's going to last a couple of months, it's not a big deal. But losses of events that commemorated major milestones for people. How many of you here are freshmen? Sophomores? Juniors? And seniors? Grad school? Okay. Think about the milestones that you might have had to put off or are just not going to happen in terms of the way you thought. And these are not insignificant, from proms to graduations to weddings, commitment ceremonies. Think about these kinds of milestones and the fact that in your lifespan, they're really meaningful and monumental. They're not just something that happens for young people. No, they're meaningful markers of achievements and of moving along and becoming and heading towards full adulthood. So these are some of the things that have really knocked people back and caused a lot of anxiety and stress. You're known for being now the youth and emerging adults of the pandemic, which is going to follow all of us. I'm one of the old people of the pandemic, which Again, these assistant professors and associates are like, yeah, keep going. So there's a lot that the pandemic has done that's increased our anxiety, from loneliness, depression, financial hardships, and so forth. And again, this isn't just part of everyday life because it's something that was extraordinary. And now, as we say, I'm actually really honored that I'm the first one to be a live speaker for you all, and really and truly, it's amazing that I can reach out and not just touch your faces on the screen or mute myself and such. It's really an interesting experience just standing up here in front of you in an auditorium like this, a room like this, and be connecting again when we've been connecting through these screens and all. But the question becomes, I'm getting closer and maybe I should back off because I don't have a mask. What is our new normal, and are we actually there? How many of you just in your mind right now are thinking about, well, can I take that mask off? New York City is saying masks off in restaurants, everywhere. Can I be safe? How many are worried about safety without masks? Okay. How many are wondering about the next wave and whether it's going to happen? How many are concerned about family members and friends who may be especially vulnerable? So we don't know really what the new normal is. And again, I spend a lot of time working with college students who have gone into isolation because of testing positive, schools that have closed down. I don't know how it went here, but I know from other campuses, you get moved into a hotel somewhere, you're by yourself, calling in an Uber food delivery again and again, and it's pretty upsetting, as I'm sure you know and maybe have experienced firsthand. So what is and when will we be understanding what this new normal really looks like? And of course, the pandemic is just one unprecedented, extraordinary event that goes on top of what are already major stressors in our lives. And especially, I was talking beforehand about the stress that young people have been experiencing and concerned with from prior to the pandemic, most especially climate change, guns in schools and in the US, gun violence, and racial bias and violence. These things were all there, and there seemed to be, at least in some situations, that young people were being starting to be listened to in a meaningful way, from Greta on climate change to the Parkland kids on gun violence. And then the pandemic steamrolls over all of it. But it's still, none of these issues has quieted down, as we know. In fact, some of them came roaring even harder at us and louder at us over the last couple of years. So here we are. Stress is a part of being human. And dealing with the unpredictable is also a part of that. But how are you all doing? One of the things that happens every year, is it every year, Dennis, on campus, is a survey of students, every 2 years, a survey of students, and the last one was 2020, so it will be coming up if you haven't gotten this already in your mailboxes. And it surveys at Columbia what are the stressors that are impacting our students on campus here. And what we saw just prior to the start, this was in the spring, early winter and spring of 2020, similar to what you were reporting today, your future employment, your current financial situation, but then also national world events. And again, I think what we were pointing to there is, remember, there was a lot going on with climate change and violence around the world, your mental health again, and so forth. So these were just prior to the pandemic. And then in comparing our Columbia students to a national survey that's done every year by Healthy Minds, what we saw is that overall, we see anxiety and depression pretty much very comparable to what is seen nationally, except our transgender and gender non-binary students experience anxiety and depression at a much higher rate than the rest of campus. Something to take into stock. PTSD also, with again our LGBTQ and gender non-binary students. Disordered eating is something also that happens in results to stress and experiencing stress. And this is not eating disorders. This is more stress eating or not eating, losing your appetite and things like that, disordered eating. So these are some of the main mental health and behaviorally with disordered eating ways that folks have been experiencing stress related to what may be perceived by them as difficult environments, difficult parts of their lives and such that we have to pay much attention to. So 26% of our students also reported having at least one mental health condition. 70% of these were currently in treatment, which I have to say, I guess one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that we have much better access to treatment by virtue of telehealth, Zoom. And in fact, I can say this especially with our high school youth that we work with at our clinic and our college-age youth. Zoom has allowed us to Zoom at all hours of the day and night at convenience to our patients, as much as we can be flexible. I do like to sleep from 3 to 4 in the morning, but otherwise I'm up. And we can do this so that there's not the travel burden and barriers like that get in the way of coming in. I hope this is the same. I know this is the same from talking to Richard Eichler here at the center, the counseling center on campus. So we see that. And just so you know, these are screening tools for symptoms. They are not diagnostic tools. So I'll take a question. I'm sorry.
The males here, I mean, they look like they're less in percentage across different categories of assessment. And is that because there were lesser respondents?
Well, we had very good response here. I believe it was around 9,000 or so respondents, so this is the mean for 9,000 or so students at Columbia compared with with that of the national survey. Well, the question is having males respond at a lesser rate of endorsing these types of symptoms. This actually is not unusual, and that reflects rates of just symptoms by surveys done nationally and internationally. Males usually endorse fewer symptoms. So it's a question of, is there a response bias in some way there? But at the same time, with the way these are worked out and the sampling strategies that are done, especially with the national survey, but even on campus, the investigators make every effort to make sure they're getting a good sample. And these are actually not high rates, but they are moderate enough rates to know that the males on campus are experiencing these stressors at this level. Okay, so they're pretty valid for this sample. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, when we move on and just think about, again, what is anxiety and how do we listen to it so that it can help us work differently in a world that is unpredictable and ever-changing. One of the things to bear in mind is, again, just as a naturally occurring emotion, anxiety is going to be with you. I mean, take a look at these different types of situations. It is normal, expected, appropriate to have some level of anxiety. I mean, I have to tell you, I was anxious getting up here today. Even though I talk a lot, and my friends will say I talk too much, I was anxious getting up here because I haven't done this in a while. Plus, also, getting up to do a talk, anxiety gets me motivated for what to do, how to look at the audience, how to read you guys, what to say, how to move in and answer questions, and so on and so forth. So all of these things that we see here, all these situations, dealing with the unknown and what might come next, silences and conversations, or when you're giving a talk and you ask a question and no one responds, all these kinds of things, conflict with others, being the center or focus of attention, changes in routine, having to travel, every one of these things causes stress and anxiety to some degree. I often say, if you don't experience anxiety in any of these situations, you may want to run for public office. Okay? Because most people should experience anxiety. And really and truly, from the mental health perspective, we tend to look at what's called the callous and unemotional person who has a bit of a personality problem. Those are the folks who they don't experience anxiety for some reason, but they wind up in a lot of trouble. Anxiety serves a good purpose for us when we listen and harness it. It alerts us to danger. But I want you to think about that word danger. And remember that danger is in the eye of the beholder. And danger is scalable for what is minor threat and danger to what is real significant bodily threat and harm and danger. Bear that in mind. Or psychological threat and harm. Emotional threat and harm. You got to think about danger on a continuum. As we get into contact with these situations that prompt our anxiety reactions, what we're doing is tripping an inborn alarm that has been hardwired and is evolutionarily way back there in our reptilian, the area of our brain that is really reptilian. And this is the fight or flight response or freeze. How many of you have been frozen when you've been stressed or anxious at times? How many of you have just gotten out or avoided a situation at times? And how about those of us who have fought? And you're just like, having a reaction at times. Fight, flight, freeze. It's there, it's hardwired. That system kicks in first. We'll talk about that more in a second. But then also, we have another system that came on later in the evolutionary line, in our frontal lobes, that allows us to, think about the future and consequences of our actions. That, though, system, while it allows us to tamp down the fight or flight response, also gets into worry. Because, what's going to happen in the future? How do I deal? What if I do this way? Does that mean that consequence is going to happen? And what does that lead to next? And then, oh my gosh, that's the situation and thoughts of what can go wrong. And I'm not prepared, or how prepared am I for things to go wrong? Can I deal with these things that might go wrong? And then what's going to happen to me? The worry system. So we've got to contend with two things in terms of our anxiety. Listening to when that alarm goes off, the oh my gosh alarm. That might be waking up in the morning and, oh my, you have 5 minutes to get across campus to your class, and that professor locks the door at 9 o'clock. Could be that alarm. What do you do with that? Or it could be that you're crossing Broadway and a car is coming at you and the horn goes and you, whoa, where is that? Let me get out of the way. The thing here is our fight or flight and freeze response, which comes from the amygdala, is immediate, sends all kinds of chemical reactions, hormones through your body. It immobilizes you to take something on, fight this thing, handle it immediately to get you out of the path of danger. Recognizing that. The next thing that happens a few minutes later is that you start to perceive what actually is that danger. Wait a minute, it's 5 minutes to class, but that guy's still offering a Zoom alternative. let me log on, even though I'm in my pajamas. I'll put a tie on or whatever, throw something around me. You have the chance to think through, after a couple of milliseconds, what might I do here? The thing about the fight or flight response, it focuses our attention on the threat while mobilizing us to deal physically, and then allows us, if we let our cortex catch up, to calm down and problem solve or to get out of the way. Then also, the cortex, again, has us thinking about consequences and the future. And a great quote here from Mark Twain: "I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which have never happened." This is your worry system, and I liken this to the idea that you're standing on a gangplank, off of a pirate ship. There's sharks there in the water, and a pirate behind you with a long sword at your back. You are trying to decide, do I jump or do I fight? What do I do? And the idea that I have no options. That's when worry runs amok. Okay? That's when worry runs amok. The idea that you're frozen with anxious apprehension, we call it. No matter what, there's no way out. But is that true? Is that true? And this is the question we always have to ask our anxiety in any given time that we're experiencing it, whether it's those fight or flight, which can turn into what we call panic attacks that keep happening again and again, if we get afraid of those sensations of the fight or flight response. If we get afraid of those sensations, it makes them come more. Or if we're constantly standing on that gangplank, we put ourselves in a state of tension, and this is where we could have muscle aches and pains, headaches, oh my gosh, migraines, tension headaches, you name it, stomach upset, because we're always thinking something's going to go wrong. Well, if you stay in those states, then the question becomes, are you moving into the realm of, well, this is problematic and I should probably get some good help to deal with this anxiety that's unrelenting? Okay? So this is important. Everyone should experience anxiety. Yes, it's okay to have panic attacks. It's okay to have worry episodes. There are nights where you're going to lose sleep at times. Things like that happen. But what we have to watch for to determine, do we need real help for this, or is this something transient and I'm learning how to manage, is does it stick with you and doesn't go away despite reassurance and despite around you things changing and the world moving on? Is your anxiety interfering with your ability to do the things that you want to do and need to do? From studying to applying for your next step, to seeing friends, to taking a break and going and sitting on the steps of the library and just hanging out. Does your anxiety get in the way of these things? And is it just not stopping? Okay, that's the difference between when anxiety happens once in a while, it is there, versus when anxiety you need some help for it. So that's going to lead us to what I want to talk the rest of the time about, which is, how do we cope? How do we cope? And there's all different kinds of ways to cope. So let me ask that question. I think we have another poll. How do we cope? Let's get a sense of that. What are the things that you do to cope with stress and anxiety? And don't think too much about it. Just answer the ones that really happen for you. Don't worry about evaluating, is this a positive coping strategy or is this one that gets me in trouble? Let's just find out. How do you cope? We set? All right. So these are our go-to stress relievers for some folks. Let's see what's coming up on the poll, but Sleeping is something that I hear a lot about. Oh my gosh, I have that paper due, plus there's an interview coming up, and plus I should be dealing with something with my roommate, but I'm just sleeping. I'm just pulling the covers over my head. I mean, again and again, I hear this, that it's a way of freezing, it's a way of avoiding and not dealing because you're feeling overwhelmed. And you know what? For me, it's Netflix. Another thing of not dealing and putting things off. Talking with someone, exercising, being alone, stress eating, working at it till it's done. These are all ways that we might find to cope, and others. So let's see what we got here. 38% is the highest, talking with someone, a family member, friend, not a mental health professional. Excellent. 38%. The next highest, 16%, working until the problem or task is done, stress eating. Those two go hand in hand there. The next are 11%. We have sleeping or exercising, and being alone, 8%. It's a pretty healthy coping group here. I'm going home now. Thanks. My job's done. Wow, excellent, excellent. Let's think about when we go to friends and such, or when friends come to us. One of the things, of course, that they're trying their best to do is help you calm down. But sometimes they're a little awkward about it or stumble through it. You're a star. Just have confidence. You know what you have to do here. You can do it. Go for it. Or, just don't think about it. It's all in your head. Just forget about it. It'll go away. You don't need to deal. Take the plunge. Just find that courage and go in there. These are well-meaning cheerleading. And our parents, our friends, we even do it to ourselves at times. What's missing here are a few things. One, first, we have to ask, are you actually being listened to? Are you being listened to? Or do the well-meaning people in our lives jump in to give us some cheerleading or tell us how to handle something, but it doesn't sit well with you, or it doesn't really address what you're managing and dealing with? Okay, one of the biggest things I've told parents over the last 2 years is stop telling your youth that it's okay they missed their graduation, the prom, or whatever it is, because you didn't have fun at yours, and there's so many other things for them to look forward to. It's like, oh my goodness. Listening first is the first step. To anyone who comes to you that they have a problem, or if you're talking with someone, ask them, can you just listen while I tell you something that's going on? That's hard for us to do, but it's a way of helping those around us who love us dearly, care for us, to help getting them into the mode of understanding, first, we must always listen. And you can ask the question, tell me a little more about that. Let me hear what else is going on around that. What are your thoughts around that when you're helping someone? Because we really need to understand from that person's perspective what's happening. And you need to do this in your own mind for yourself too, to tune in that way. What I want you to do first and foremost with coping with anxiety is take stock of actually how are things going for you? So we're going to take stock of a few things. First and foremost, your own self-care. And in this, I want you to think about how many of you have never flown on an airplane? Exactly. What's the first thing they do when they're on the airplane and we're taxiing? The flight attendants are standing up there. They tell you, if the mask falls out from above, who do you put it on first? The kid next to you or you? You put it on you. And this is so critical. This is not a trite little thing to say. Self-care is so critical for you, for all of us, to be able to manage not just the everyday anxiety we all experience, but the stuff that we can't predict or control. If you take care of yourself, your sleeping, your eating habits, your physical body with exercise, walking, whatever it may be, calming yourself and soothing yourself in ways that really help to soothe and calm, you then are better prepared to deal with the unknown, the unexpected, and the everyday. Self-care is critical, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. And we also have to talk about checking your emotions and what that means, how to deal with things going on at school, and then socializing. So the first thing you have to do is question yourself. How frequently do you actually experience the signs of stress in your body and in your mind? In your body, it's feeling tension, it's feeling queasy, it's feeling your heart race, it's feeling your jaw tightening, your stomach upset. It's not sleeping well or sleeping too much. Think about that. How many of you might be headed to medical school or nursing school or something in the health sciences? We all learn to go through what's called the review of systems, checking within ourselves or within our patients, everything that from their head, eyes, ears, nose, throat, abdomen, their physical legs, bones, you name it. You go through all the system. You have to do that for yourselves. Go through a review for yourself and ask, how am I physically feeling and experiencing this anxiety? And where is it problematic for me? So this is number one, a big question. Then the second thing, and we have to ask this, in what way are your emotions and your expression of them or your experience of them different than when you arrived on campus or from the past year or two? How have your emotions changed? And in what way? What feelings are mostly there? Maybe you aren't noticing this so much, but what have other people said to you? And are the things they're saying, like, you seem tense, or why are you so irritable, or boy, I haven't heard from you in a while, you're so quiet, whatever. What they're saying to you, is it valid? Before jumping to being defensive, is it valid what they're saying to me? Wait a minute, let me take stock. How's your work going? Are you meeting the responsibilities that you have set out for yourself, being here and being a student? And what's in front of you with classes? Are you engaging the way you need to, or are you sleeping through them? What's going on there? Is that typical for you? Is it something that's been a challenge, or is it different? And since when? And also, what about your routines? Do you have them? Have you set them up? Are they good for you? When you're getting up, when you're going out and seeing friends and so forth, and especially, have you changed in your socializing habits? First step is taking stock, and it's critical that we take stock, because then that helps us to identify where we have needs to manage our anxiety, and then we have to assess what can we do in these different areas. Our self-care, our emotions, our socializing, our work and school habits. So we have to identify, first and foremost, are we reaching out for help where we need it? One of the biggest things, my largest program at the clinic at Columbus Circle is our young adult program, 18 to roughly 25-year-olds. These are young adults who graduated high school, maybe they started at college, but they left on medical leave because of anxiety or depression. Some of them, even though they white-knuckled it through high school, just never got out of the house to get to school, even though they might have been accepted. And what happens with them, quite frankly, is they have had a hard time asking for help. This isn't something that happened one day. They woke up and it's over. I can't deal with this anymore. It actually is pretty insidious anxiety in that they stop going to a class here or there. They fall behind. They don't ask for help, go to office hours with the professor or the TA. They just pull the covers over the head, literally, one after the other, and just stay in their room. And eventually, they keep telling themselves, I'll make it up, I'll catch up, I'll catch up, and they fall apart. And by Thanksgiving, usually, or at the very least by December break, they're out. So we have to ask, are we asking for help and from the people who really can help us? And it may be it's your best friend, may be your roommate, may be a family member, or may be your faculty, if it's something that's related to work and such. How do you manage difficult emotions and such that show up in you? Is it by going online? Is it by rage texting? What are the things that you do that are helpful or not to you? We have to take stock of that. And a big thing that we have a lot of trouble with, I want you to think about this, is how you coach yourself and how compassionate you are to yourselves. If I were to take everyone here and give you a 5-year-old to teach, let's say, how to play t-ball, which is hitting a baseball, right? Let's say we did that, and you had a little kid, they're supposed to hit the ball, and another little 5-year-old is supposed to catch it. And let's say that little guy or little girl with their mitt is just standing there and lets the ball just soar over their heads. What, as their coach, are you going to do? Are you going to yell at them like, what the heck was that? You're supposed to catch the ball. Are you going to be like, gosh darn, you can't learn anything. What's the matter with you? Or are you going to look at that child and say, all right, okay, hey, next time someone hits the ball, I want you to put your glove up and try. Let's put your glove up. And another ball comes, and maybe that ball bounces right out of that little one's glove. Are you going to yell at them again like, No, you're going to say, good effort. Now maybe close the glove the next time the ball comes by. In other words, you would coach that little one with giving them opportunities to practice, focusing on their efforts, guiding them along the way, and helping them to stay open-minded and optimistic to this game. Because if you yelled at them, they're never coming back to play t-ball again. The question is, and you'd be compassionate, but the question is, are you compassionate with yourself? And do you help guide yourself through when you are meeting challenges? And then we have to identify, are you trying too hard to over-control what's going on? Because this is the other thing that happens, is especially when things are out of our control and unpredictable, we try to exert too much control over things that we have very little control over. Sure, we can wear masks, but we can't count that other people on the subways are going to be doing that, but we can wear masks, let's say. All right? You have to understand what is in your control and then how to have plans B, C, and D for dealing with things that may happen, but you can't predict. The biggest thing that you have to do with coping with anxiety is, again, what anxiety doesn't want you to do. We actually call anxiety the big liar. It whispers all the time in the back of our heads, get out, avoid, don't. But in fact, we have to help ourselves to move towards and engage with the things that are difficult for us. Now, I say this with the caveat that, again, if it is a situation that is harmful to your emotional or physical health, no, then you have to go get help from someone who may be in a position to manage that with you. Bullying, assault, pressures, peer pressures on you, various things like this. We've got to get assistance to manage that. But otherwise, what we have to learn is that the more we put off and procrastinate, the more it feeds our anxiety. And every time we escape a situation or avoid a situation, we may feel relief momentarily, but it solidifies that anxiety and doesn't help you deal with the fact that it could be a difficult situation, but you can develop resources and find them to manage it. So this is very important. One of the big things in our treatment is we actually purposefully make things go wrong when we are helping people expose themselves to what they're afraid of. We don't just do, let's have happy endings to our anxiety, because that's not real life. Real life is complicated and messy. So you have to experience things that are difficult so that you can engage the resources that actually are there within you. And so taking action is what we call exposure. Exposing yourself to situations and learning how to use skills and resources within yourself to manage those situations to move forward. First and foremost, when we hit that self-care, let's do something just for a moment here. This is the most portable, centering exercise to do from the moment you are awake in the morning to before you walk in to speak to that professor or that internship interview, or before you're going to discuss with someone you have a conflict with. First thing to do, if everybody would just put their hand on their stomach, your pinky should be on your navel, right on it. And imagine there's a tube running down the back of your throat and it ends with a balloon that's under your hand. Very first thing to do is just breathe so you inflate that balloon on the inhale, slowly, and then exhale to deflate the balloon. And do this breathing in to the count of 1, 2, 3, and exhale 2, 3. Inhale 2, 3. Exhale 2, 3. If you do this for 3 to 5 minutes before you get out of bed, before you go into a stressful situation, from exams to meetings, whatever, this is going to help you center. This is the most portable, self-soothing, steadying activity you could do, deep diaphragmatic breathing. And you know what? Nobody actually will know you're doing it once you get the hang of it. They don't even know. This is how you keep your cool and grace under fire, because it allows you to organize your thoughts and then really have your brain power working for you and dealing with whatever the situation is. I can't stress enough, from the time the pandemic hit, the number one thing that was, one of the big things that was taken out of our lives was movement. Physically moving around. And even my clients who are physically constricted and restricted because of physical limitations said the ability to just get outside, the ability to move around, this has been the biggest thing. It is so imperative that you get exercise, even for 10 minutes. Short exercise at different points of the day, or in the evenings. I'm an evening exerciser. I'm on Netflix and the treadmill every night for 50 minutes. I don't care if I get home at 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock, I'm doing it. I don't know, I fall asleep afterwards, it's good. Getting exercise is a critical stress reliever and anxiety reducer, so we have to do that. Of course, I'm running out of time. A big thing that we have to do is watch our intake of substances. Substances, alcohol, pot, in the immediate short term, make you feel a bit relaxed and open, but actually it's another avoidance strategy, because you're not engaging your own resources, you're using something to calm yourself that actually has a rebound on you. So it adds to your stress. So we want to watch that. Meditation And I know we have different times on campus when there are meditation activities and yoga. These, again, go into a deeper frame of getting you centered and focused. And what's important about meditation and practicing mindfulness is it's not about the past. One of the big things we have to learn to do is forgive ourselves when we've screwed up in the past. All right, I'm going to tell you something. I know this is going to be on video now forever, but if you had my transcript from college, every letter of the alphabet is on that transcript. I had yes, Fs, and a professor here. Okay, maybe the Bollinger will get rid of me or whatever, I don't know. But that's, and even in grad school, Bs make PhDs, and I had to keep trying to get those Bs. That's the way it goes. I had to forgive myself for not focusing when I needed to. Forgive yourself for things that happen, whatever it is, and move yourself into the moment, in the present. That's what mindfulness does, and helps you get clarity then for what to do in taking steps of moving forward from there. So let some things go. And did anyone see the little 9-year-old in Ukraine? And she's in a shelter, which is a subway station, singing Let It Go. We can learn from her as we keep her in our hearts and our thoughts and others. Think about that. So I want you to think about listening. Listening isn't just a technique, but it's an activity you do with intent. Whether you're listening to others or listening to yourselves when it comes to anxiety, it's listening with intent to understand what is getting me now. How am I managing it? How is it affecting the way I'm talking and coaching myself? How is it affecting my problem solving, my physical status, and what am I doing about that that is working and what isn't? And where can I access help? You have to listen in. Anxiety is always alerting us that something's going on. The question is, again, am I misunderstanding and am I making what we call cognitive errors in terms of this anxiety and putting too much into what I fear versus what is reality that I can handle, or what? Or do I actually need to jump on some more help? And I will wrap up in a second here, but turn your what ifs into so what. Not so what in a dismiss my thought, but instead of what if things go wrong, so what if this doesn't work the way I want to? So what if it doesn't go the way that I hope? Then what can I do? We have to think about the likelihood that things, the actual likelihood of what can happen, and be realistic about our abilities to manage them and problem solve and get help. Thinking that our thoughts are not facts, they are hypotheses. This is so important because I'll end here, even though we have more slides that will be up on the web. The biggest thing you could do for yourself is become flexible in your thinking. When anxiety takes hold, it narrows our vision, narrows our thinking, and again, it's misleading us not to seeing the big picture and helping us to learn how to roll and adapt. If you develop psychological flexibility, that means you are going to adapt to what may be another wave, or what may be things that happen in the world and on campus, and you're going to reconfigure your resources of problem solving, coping, soothing. You're going to reconfigure those in a way that helps you to address what's going on from a problem solving approach as opposed to feeling just overwhelmed. It allows you to really stay centered and balanced. With that, we'll take questions, and thank you. Let's see. This is Mindshift. Let me just say there's an app on the web that's free. It's actually from our friends above the northern border in Canada. Go to anxietycanada.ca. But Anxiety Canada has Mind Shift. It's free, and it has all of these different resources, breathing exercises, mindfulness, how to coach yourselves to think differently under stress. It's a fantastic app, and it's like the one that I use. I know there's thousands of apps out there, but this is the one I use. If you scan, you can scan in questions, and we can take those. All right, no responses yet? Yes, we have a question from the audience.
First and foremost, thank you for your insights. My phone is dead at the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, see, coping with anxiety of not having an active phone. Oh, no. I'm going to repeat the question so that everybody can hear it. Yes?
I saw a post today on BBC News that with COVID, our brains are shrinking, or they shrunk by a certain percentage. And that concerned me because as someone who had COVID, I was thinking, I don't feel the same motivation I used to feel. I'm a grad student, undergrad, and it's been something to cope with. So I was wondering if you have an explanation for that.
Okay. This is actually a concern related to the pandemic, to COVID, and that there's reports, BBC News was reporting that that there may be a shrinking of the brain in some ways for those who have suffered with COVID-19 and been infected with it. So that's a question that we have heard different. We've heard different stories and seen different reports of long COVID, which is having different types of symptoms that last for a long time, and ways that COVID might affect different systems from the brain and neurological system through others. And what we understand in the moment is that there's no good answer yet. Because actually, to really understand how something like a virus like that impacts the body, it does take large numbers of people who have been infected and comparing them to people who are similar to them, again, another large number of people who have not and don't have other kinds of symptoms or medical conditions and stuff. This is called the case-controlled study and others. So the that question is out there, but it's not able to be answered yet. But what I will say, when you're saying that you don't feel the same level of motivation and things have been different, and you're in grad school now, let's also understand that those are real feelings of yours, and those who have experienced things like that, these are real valid feelings that you have. Again, the question becomes taking stock of what in its totality is going on around you. One of the things that we've learned, and this is covered in large samples since the start of COVID-19, is that motivation to do the things that people normally enjoy or dedicated themselves and signed up to do, be it grad school or a new job or things, that motivation has really tanked in most of us, with or without having experienced COVID-19 itself, just by nature of what's happened in the world. The avenues that we usually have for engaging with professors, with, again, in our field that we're in, with fellow grad students, let's say your students, just moving around, seeing family, just having the freedoms that we used to enjoy really were squashed. So I would say don't overdiagnose yourself yet. Don't be so quick to look for that cause that you see from the news reports. I'd refer you to talk to your doctors if you are experiencing symptoms that you're concerned about, and you've got to follow that up with your physicians over time. In the meantime, all these things for self-care, really try to start engaging, okay?
I just wanted to add something. It's concerning because as someone who's got COVID not once but twice, the percentage, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was around 17%. I think, wow, that's almost half my brain.
Well, you know, and the question again is if you've had COVID twice, how that doubles its impact or such, that again is an open question. But the fact that you're sitting here and thinking and talking the way that you are, I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that there's been a big effect. I would direct you to go speak, though, to somebody who can give you more informed response there, okay, in terms of the medical aspects of this. And you know what? I'm a friend of Fauci. I love Fauci. Listen to Fauci. Forget about these other folks who spout ideas. Just that's for everyone. Here's something. I tend to get anxiety when really good things are happening in my life. I don't understand. What do you recommend? Well, this is one of the things just to know. And again, anxiety itself, again, is a normal, just naturally occurring emotion. It does happen in the best of times. I've got a daughter right now who is planning her wedding. Oh my gosh, I want to just put her in a box and just say, just deal. Or just I'll deal with it and just come out on that day. Think about, anxiety for good events happens. You get a new job, you're all excited, and then it's like, oh my gosh, are they going to like me? Am I going to adjust to this? Anxiety is always there. Now here's something else I want you to think about. Your nervous systems can only do so many things. I want you to think about this. All right, I'm going to step out a little here and take a little risk, but what are the sensations of anxiety? Butterflies, racing hearts, sweaty palms, let's say, little shakiness. What are the sensations when you're sexually aroused? Okay? Think about this. Breathlessness, sweating. Your nervous system can only do so many things. How you label that arousal makes the difference between a pleasant sexual encounter or, I'm aroused, I got to run out of here because it's my anxiety, they're going to notice it, and I'm not going to be able to engage in this romance. Believe it or not, my patients who have a lot of anxiety about relationships, they use that arousal when they're attracted to someone or somebody, that they want to be with is coming on to them. They use that arousal to run away instead of understanding that's part of attraction and part of the romance and such. So you've got to look at, in any situation, yes, you're going to feel those sensations. Yes, of course there's anxiety in every situation. But is it telling you to really get out? Or is it telling you, what is it that I'm excited about? Or what is it that I'm engaged in with this? Or what do I want to do with this good situation, this happy event, or whatever it might be? Bear that in mind. Our nervous systems can only do so much. Another question. Sometimes I worry over something. I might get upset with myself and tell myself that it seems trivial relative to what others are experiencing. How can I practice self-compassion when such thoughts occur? I will tell you all this. Your thoughts and your emotions around them are valid. This is meaningful to you. Take stock for yourself in why this is meaningful for you. One of the things that has hit us so hard over the last several years, and I'm going to say 20 years really, is comparing ourselves to others. Be it on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I know you don't use Facebook, it's old people who do, but just comparing ourselves to others and thinking, I'm less than, because those folks have more going for them, have bigger problems to deal with and stuff. Yes, maybe they do, but still, what you're concerned with and worried about is valid for you. This is where self-compassion comes in. So it's not about comparing yourself to others. It's taking stock about what do you need and letting yourself get what you need to move forward and to manage that situation. All right? So please take that on. That's something that we hear a lot about. So that's not an unusual thought. We hear about it all the time. When consumed with anxiety, what are the best ways of coping in that moment? Breathing is number one thing. Breathing, and also, again, unless the situation is really that physically something or emotionally something is endangering you, where you need to get out of that situation, you should. But if it's something that's overwhelming you and you're very anxious about, and you're having trouble collecting your thoughts, bear in mind, take your time. Take your time. You can even say, if it's someone standing over you saying, hey, blah, 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 you know, can I have a minute to think? It takes a lot of courage, I understand that, but this is something we try to teach, is saying, I'm thinking, I don't want to continue the conversation right now. Give me some time to think. And gather your thoughts and use that breathing technique and help yourself think through, what is your goal here? What is your goal? Whether it's a conflict, whether it's a chore or challenge that's being put on you that you don't want, what is your goal here? Gather yourself and then look at the person and respond with what you want. This is where we can disagree, respectfully disagree with someone, or agree to disagree, or we can say no. And letting yourself do what you need is so important here. So when you're anxious like that in the moment, give yourself time. And I will say also, when things pile up, again, as I was referring to students that I work with, go and ask for time. Now, it's hard. Some professors and stuff don't always want to give extensions, whatever. This actually happened to me when my fiance dumped me right before 2 weeks, well, right before final exams, and I failed evolutionary biology. Had to spend another semester at FSU. Okay, whatever. And the professor, when I asked, can I have an extra week? I just got dumped, and he's like, no, grow up. You're an adult now. You have to deal. It's like, okay, all right. I didn't quite grow up in the moment, but I recognize that sometimes you can't get what you want, and there's consequences, and you have to deal, okay. But you can collect yourself, and you should go seek. If you need some extra time, you should go ask, because otherwise you'll beat yourself up if you don't. And also you'll find out, what do you have to do in the moment? How can you manage this situation? I recognize I had another semester of football at my college, which, okay, now I wish I hadn't done that, but nonetheless, what's the silver lining for you? You've got to look for those things. Let's see if we have more time. We're doing okay? What about anxiety that is trauma-induced? When you are anxious because the situation resembles a trauma you've experienced in the past, what's a coping method? One of the biggest things here is focusing on the here and now. And this is hard because by its nature, trauma and the symptoms of post-traumatic stress or acute stress are that you feel as if this is happening again or could happen very immediately again. This is where triggers to a trauma, things that resemble, smell like, just the mood of a situation. There's many things that might prompt someone to have a flashback reaction, which is comprised of a lot of anxiety and re-experiencing. I worked with a woman once who was raped by her abusive husband, and outside of their house on the ground, and her head was turned, and there happened to be a cat a little ways away from her, just sitting there, as cats might do. And for the next 25 years, she would have re-experiencing flashbacks whenever there was a cat nearby her. These things happen, that they come to you Sometimes it seems out of the blue, you're triggered. And what we try to teach in cognitive processing therapy and in different forms of trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy is staying in the moment and recognizing and learning how to ride the wave of anxiety that happens, but being, and physically that you might experience, but being present in the surroundings that you're in and anchoring your attention on the safe and neutral cues that are here for you. I would say if this kind of anxiety persists for you, there's very good help that is available out there through our Counseling and Psychological Services Center and other parts of the university and also in the community. No one should live with being triggered again and again by things that have happened in their past, okay? Next question, how to stop avoiding work and procrastinating. Oh, this is a question, if I could go back here for a second to a slide I passed up. Where is it? Oh my gosh. Well, where's my grandma's rule? I lost it. Anyway, grandma's rule is the way to deal with procrastination. What is grandma's rule? First you eat your spinach, then you get your ice cream. This is also known as the Premack principle by David Premack, who was a professor of psychology, I think, at Penn. And the thing here is, what we need to do with procrastination is put first the behavior we need to do, but we don't want to. And it might be, in the case of writing, for example, for an assignment or something, it might be just spewing out whatever stream of consciousness is in your head. But just start the typing. And doing that, and removing distractions and doing that, and after giving yourself a half hour at that, then do something you want to do. But we want to break these down, not to the idea that I'm going to sit down and write my whole paper that's due in this next 6 hours. No. Really, what is reasonable for right now for the next half hour, a smaller chunk or hour, and then what can I do for 10, 15 minutes that relaxes me, but doesn't take me down a rabbit hole of moving away from the task at hand. So you don't turn on the Gilded Age or something like that. No, you might go for a walk, or you might call a friend for talking for a little bit, but don't go into something that in and of itself is another long experience that would really take you away. So first you eat your spinach, then you get your ice cream. Think about that. That is really the number one thing that we do for procrastination. It does mean learning more time management. It does mean learning how to get rid of distractions, right? And it does mean organizing yourself. This also involves a lot of times going and talking to whoever it is that is in charge of whatever you are procrastinating on, be it an assignment or something, because just getting ideas out with that professor or whatever it may be, the supervisor you're working under, what have you, just batting things around gives you a start of what to write down. Okay, so that's a big thing for procrastination. One more question. I'm not finding how to see I think I lost the questions. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. What is the best way to practice listening? Whoa, I just lost it. What's the best way? It's underneath this one. Best way to practice listening if you have a habit of talking immediately as a reaction to others telling you something. Oh, that's a good one. Here's what you want to practice doing. You want to practice, get a partner, and you want to practice with your best friend, BFF, whatever, sitting across from one another looking eye to eye. I used to do this with knee to knee and eye to eye, but nope, COVID time, sitting across, looking eye to eye. And for the next 15 minutes, just being with one another without speaking. Do this again and again with friends, with your siblings. Do this in the mirror with yourself, looking eye to eye and being silent. This helps you to start tuning in and having an awareness of the other person and what thoughts come up in you, and managing a bit of your discomfort with not being able to jump in. Okay? Because this is the way we start listening, is by, we practice a little silence and just being present. All right? And that is compassionate too. But it's amazing the things you're going to hear and you're going to become aware of in an experience like that, whether you're doing it with a friend or you're doing it with yourself in the mirror. With that, I want to thank you all for being here and being on Zoom. Thank you for inviting me. I hope this was helpful. Take care. Is that okay?
Oh, it's great.
I didn't get through all the slides.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, everybody. On behalf of University Life, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight, and a big, big thank you to Dr. Albano for sharing with us such rich and meaningful lessons. So thank you so much. And if you'd like to find out more about Dr. Albano's work, please check out her 2020 TED Med Talk, How to Raise Kids Who Can Overcome Anxiety, and her 2014 book, You and Your Anxious Child, Free Your Child from Fears and Worries and Create a Joyful Family Life. Dr. Albano also has a podcast called Listen More, so check that out as well. This was part of University Life's Wellness Days programming. We have more wellness programming scheduled throughout the rest of the semester, so please check out our website at universitylife.columbia.edu. Thank you, everyone. Be well. Take care.